when your podcast becomes the story. JF Garpiey Attacks on tonight's show. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, let's get into it. So, some fantastic comments. It's really getting hard for me to pick. They're all so good. So a long time ago, I got a mysterious comment in the beginning of me covering this story. More towards the middle of me covering this story. A very mysterious comment. And it says, the developmentally challenged, quote unquote, woman went to college and had a driver's challenge. Does he mean license? Or does he or she mean license? This is from El Jim. So how developmentally challenged was she really? This was a narrative spun by Destiny and DGG Reddit after Destiny lost a debate on race realism. Besides, JF is a clearly developmentally challenged man himself and got a doctorate and is able to trigger an allegedly non-quote developmentally challenged hysterical woman on YouTube from his cabin in Canada. It's not true that Mama JF's wild travels aren't known. She's been telling her stories on YouTube and same so-called trolls who are really an assembly of salty Lola cows, LOL cows, led by Andy Tarsky. Who almost became an accomplice to murder on stream and does copious amounts of Coca-Cola and coincidentally got his career ruined by trying tussle with JF because JF called him low IQ, poked fun at it back then, but are currently blissfully ignoring their own words and the history of it to fit their forced lol cow narrative. And this is why actual old school trolls don't F with them and burned all their platforms to the ground and drove Andy Tartsky into insanity, because you can't force memes and hitching your horse to the forced narratives of salty lol cows. LOL cows. Ensures you I think I missed some of it. As a final warning, this channel and its owner is quickly trending towards becoming a Lolo cow. Lol cow, I'm sorry. It's so odd a word. Lol cow, for those same reasons specified above. It's trying to tap into a troll audience and trying to farm views from it. And it is this cycle of dependency that makes someone easy to manipulate and a good lol cow. If, for example, someone digs up a dox or some naughty lore that could threaten the existence of the channel and or reputation of its owner, then he or she, due to the dependency, will feel compelled to engage and respond and keep a jour with the fickle wishes of the trolls. And this is something that eventually will happen with a crowd of thousands of trolls. It's almost an internet rule of sort. Quote, live by the sword, die by the sword, unquote, etc. All it takes is one dedicated autist to dig through crime records, and former relationship statuses. Good luck there. think you'll be deeply disappointed in both those things. And those pay piggies will quickly smell blood in the water. And like Andy Tarski and Tonka Saul and Ethan Ralph and so on, and so many others before them and after them discovered, the shark doesn't pay mind to who is doing the trashing and bleeding. They just want to feed. So that was a mysterious comment. And then we got this comment, and this Weeb 3277 has left a few comments on my JF episodes. Let me guess, if JF wouldn't let her go, you'd accuse him of being abusive and controlling. Anyway, you made like 12 videos on him already in the last 2 weeks. Maybe give it a rest. Touch grass, feed your cats. I don't. Can I talk and chew gum at the same time? And then under that, someone wrote, liking your own comment is cringe, cracked me up. You made this comment on a few of her videos, right? JF, is that your alt? Ligma 212 wrote, hey JF, how's the investigation going? You nervous? So always so good wrote cringe. Gemex1 wrote wrong. These videos are great and informative. Militant Perf wrote cool story, JF sock puppet account. And Diego Rivera wrote, he didn't let her go. He abandoned her into the woods with no money, shelter, children, or clothes. So much for a caring husband. Yeah, right on the money, Diego Rivera, for sure. But apparently he watched the whole 2-hour stream. But first I want to get into your comments, and then I'll get into what JF said on his stream and on Twitter. And then we can look at some statement analysis. That's what's on the docket for today. So, oh wait, hold on. I want to go back. Sorry. Craig R's wrote in the live chat, he said, imagine a woman breaking up with a guy and he stands there and says, I can't stop you, but remember, you might get essayed out there. My words, not his. Said with psycho eyes. She would have been terrified. Really insightful point. Agree? Yeah. It's just a mystery if that ever happened, as JF is not a reliable narrator. If she was let off somewhere, many people feel, actually, not many, a few people have agreed with Tree of Logic and said that perhaps he had let her off somewhere for someone else to do it, meaning he engaged someone else. But I would think that this happened between the two of them. If I had to guess, that's just my instinct. But I could be wrong and they could be right. I want to thank Meredith. I'm so sorry, Meredith. I didn't get to read your super chat last night. Anxious to see, this is about Damien Eccles. If Damien Eccles' magic gets him off the DNA hook, or if another block will surface. Love your show. Thank you. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. I do try to read it. That just came right at the end and I missed it. Shia Eyes 2C41 said, this was good, thank you. With all his money talk, it made me think he won't spend money on a lawyer because he's cheap. I hadn't considered that. With his new fridge buying and redecorating and total cleaning of his house and drywalling of his house, I didn't think of him as cheap. And of course, he knows the work of a lawyer better than any lawyer. So yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of the latter, meaning he thinks he's the best lawyer. But if you've been following true crime, you know that only a fool has himself for a client as a, right, for a lawyer, has himself as a, right, you know what I'm talking about, that famous quote. Scott Survival 6960 says, I've known of JF for many years, and this turn of events was shocking, as I don't expect it to happen to anyone in particular. But it makes sense in hindsight based on his views on Brian Laundrie, Bill Cosby, and Harvey Weinstein. I was shocked. He really supported all three of those people. That's shocking. Bill Cosby, he's like, what, 50 women came out? He's like, yeah, it's a big conspiracy. And Harvey Weinstein had the most shocking thing in his trial, that his balls are sewn to the inside of his leg. Look it up. I don't even know how that is possible. That has to be some incredible criminal defense lawyering tactic, because it was brought up by the defense, if I'm remembering correctly. It may not be, but I was shocked when I read that he had syphilis and he ended up, everyone said he's deformed. And that came up in my interview many years ago with Mark Ebner. I asked him about that, and he heard that through Mel Gibson. So it had been going around Hollywood that Harvey Weinstein had this kind of deformity from syphilis. Sebastian Hasingler X says, I think there's a nervousness to his maniacal laughter. It's forced, covering some worries. I had the same thought. Not Maureen says, am I crazy, or did JF say on the Crucible or Dick Masterson interviews that maybe some sort of law enforcement employee was aware of him and watching his channel and noticed Alora's absence? But I believe a comment on the local Facebook posting about her disappearance said it was a healthcare employee who noticed Alora wasn't bringing the baby in for appointments. And last two, Susan Swan, 6278, he looks sheepish, at the start, and everyone is getting an os except the mother of his children. Also, I didn't do it. What didn't you do, JF? Bleeding Berry Juice says, it's been obvious since this first came to public attention that he was guilty. He sounds just as guilty as Chris Watts. Okay, I'm going to take a quickie break. When we get back, JF Garpiey attacks. The fangs come out when we return. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. So whoever sent me this on Twitter, thank you so much. I had an extremely busy week with super long days, so I have not been following this story as closely as I like. So I got a message on Twitter that he mentioned you, and I was like, well, he could be. Who is he? You know, with all the people, is it any of the number of people I talk about on this channel? Barry Schecht, the Innocence Project, Damien Eccles. But that turned out to be JF himself. And he watched the 2 hour of the stream, and he has now strawmanned my argument too. But first he starts out talking about Twitter and his Twitter being hid somehow, like shadow. I don't think it's exact shadow banned is the word for it, but it's hidden. So that if someone responds to it and you scroll up, it'll just say like, this comment is not available. So he's complaining about that.
This is 1776 part 2 for the whole world. Vivek and Alex Jones warn of the upcoming globalist technocracy. In a deep dive with one of the most amazing, if you want to watch it, it's still available as a recording for $20 on the Subscribe Star. We discussed in this that there were a bunch of people obsessed with true crime coverage of my story. And I hadn't given a listen to any of those. But yesterday, I found it fascinating, and I gave it a try.
He just decided yesterday, of all days, to just give it a try. And he seemed to watch 2 hours of the stream.
There are people making 2-hour-long streams with the absolute most ridiculous speculations about me. And I posted a clip on my Twitter yesterday. There's this cigarette-voiced woman who's like, she doesn't even show herself to the camera. And you can see in her voice that she's, outdated. And she's like, he's not looking good. He's looking very pale. He seems very nervous.
How much would you love it? JF can do his imitation of me, and I will do my imitation of him, and we can have a conversation. That would be amazing. Amazing, wouldn't it?
And very anxious. Look at his eyes. And people were pointing out, this is JF's fucking eyes since forever. I've always had pouches under my eyes. It's just, I spend my days inside in a dark room doing computers, I'm exposed to maybe 5% of the light you guys are exposed to. I live inside and I love my life. And it's not an illustration of fatigue that I have pouches under my eyes.
He loves his life. He loves his life. He's got right, because he's already told us he's had 4 months of absolute happiness now that Alora has been missing. Most people, but he says I guess I was wrong. And I knew the minute I said it, but that's exactly what I saw. I saw a pale-faced, baggy-eyed, he looks a lot better here, person. Has nothing to do with his guilt. It has to do with his situation. It's so crazy. Yeah, if you're going and talking to the police, even as an innocent person, that's going to be stressful. But he is so up and defensive. He's going to straw man this and make it seem like it doesn't even make any sense. Like all baggy-eyed, pale-faced people are actually criminals. That's how we point them out. I mean, it's just such shortcuts to thinking, but okay.
That's just how I've been. Like, if she had done some research, she would know that I don't have pouches under my eyes because I'm a murderer, you fucking idiot. I have pouches under my eyes because I have pouches under my eyes for the last 30 years. But no, she's like, he must have done something wrong here. See how pale he is? And she says, I noticed he was that pale before he even started talking. It's like if you judge someone that they...
Yeah, just like when I was in the Nexium trial, in the early hearings, and I looked at Allison Mack and Claire Bronfman, and a lot of the young women there, and they looked not like JF, they looked much worse. They looked a shade of yellow and gray that I've never seen in a human being before, thanks to their low-calorie vegan diet that Keith Raniere insisted upon. But yeah, you do notice it when someone doesn't look well. Would I be a better person if I didn't notice it?
If you judge someone guilty of murder because they have a pale skin,
Where did I say that, JF? Please point out where I said that you're guilty of murder because of your pale skin and your baggy eyes. Where did I say that? Please point it out. Yeah, I have a podcast. There's no need for me. I have done it. I have done many live streams where I've shown myself showed my face.
You are on the wrong track. It's the other way around. It's like you got the bigotry, but
wait, so it's the other way around? I'm a killer because wait. How would that even work? It's the other way around. So he's saying I'm not a killer and that's why I have bags under my eyes? That could be. I could be totally wrong. Yeah, you're under investigation. But he wants everyone to think that he's sleeping like a baby, yucking it up. Maybe he is. Maybe it's not stressful at all. Lie detectors, filmed interrogations, people going through your finances. That's all a slice of cake for you. Fine.
You didn't get it in the right sense. I have some other tricks for you to find criminals that will be much more productive. Nick Fuentes will be debating Alex.
Please send those tips, JF. And please, this is a personal plea from me to you. Please record a song called I Want to Inseminate You. Please, just for me, just for me. But I got a real kick out of that. And why I got a real kick out of that is because of all the things that I said in that stream. I said he was coercive. He was in a coercive, controlling relationship. I called him an antisocial personality. Oh, I mean, it's just like the list could go on and on and on. But what he was concerned about was that I thought he looked bad. So if I thought he was a killer and he looked great, so what it's always, it's his ego is so big. And yes, I'm 50 years old. What am I supposed to pretend I'm 25? I'm sorry that the person who's dreaming of 1920 thinks that I'm outdated. I think I'm a little too mentally old for you, JF. I'm too old for you in every single way. And for whoever left that comment, that long comment, the courts determined that her mental age was 10 to 11 years old. In the court records, this is the lawsuit that the parents of this 19-year-old mentally challenged woman that JF contends isn't mentally challenged. And strangely, the person who left the comment contends the same thing. Excuse me. In those court records, there are conversations quoted from her mother saying, well, how do you think that you're going to earn money? And she just puts her head down. And then her mom asks, well, how does JF earn money? And she just put her head down and said nothing. And then added, JF says I could have a cooking show. And in those court documents, it says that she had to be reminded to be bathed. To bathe. So I don't know. You lost. Court won. Between you and the court, I will believe the court's word. But when you have that kind of mindset, very egotistical mindset of a sociopath, you are the court. You are the law. Very Crowley-ish. I do my will, F everyone else. And that includes the laws, other people's feelings don't exist. That's the kind of worldview. And the law, I'm smarter than the law. all you low IQ normies out there. But he also made his own little Twitter video. Let's look at that real quick.
Referring to Zen for now.
And of course, he's not going to say my name, but thank you for leaving my logo up there. I appreciate it, JF.
Now, Zen for now was saying people have to watch what they say online because they will change things to mean what they want them to say. Just a warning. Oh yeah, I mean, don't worry about me. Now, I would
look at those bags under his eyes. He does not look well. He looks drawn to me and very pale and worried. And that was the first thing I noticed before he even started talking. When I first watched this, is his appearance. Are you seeing the same thing?
Well, I will referring to Zen for now. Zen for now was saying people have to watch what they say online because they will change things to mean what they want them to say. Just a warning. Oh yeah, I mean, don't worry about me. Now, I would.
All right. Is that the whole clip? Did we just listen to the whole clip? I guess that's the whole clip. All right. Thanks, JF. Where in that did I say that your appearance means that you murdered someone? Where did I say that? When we get back, we're going to go into the rest of Peter Hyatt's amazing statement analysis. Very interesting stuff. Stay tuned. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. Steve B., thanks so much for the super chat. This is amazing. I've known of this weirdo for a long time. Your analysis is spot on. I haven't laughed this much in ages. Your voice is so relaxing. Thank you. Well, the voice is like one of those things that you can't do much about. Unless JF wants to sponsor some voice changing lessons or something. I mean, you're really just stuck with it. So it's nothing I can do anything about. And in the oh, I'm so tired. I just lost my train of thought. Let's get into Peter Hyatt. Amazing work on this is the work he did on the Caitlin Markham case. And her boyfriend, John Carter, is just going to trial now. So for years and years, this remained unsolved. At first, she was just a missing person. Then her body was discovered in a different state. I believe it happened in Ohio, and I believe her body was found in Indiana, near where John Carter, her boyfriend, his family had property. And John Carter's story was about as sus, if not about just as sus as JF's story. He said that he hung out with her that night, and before he left, Caitlin gave him 2 giant garbage bags full of paper for him to burn. And I always found that a very odd detail. His 911 call seemed to be to inform that she was missing rather than to find her. And as we know, JF never called 911, never informed anyone as far as we know, that she was missing. According to him, someone noticed that she was missing. And we've all been noticing a shift in attitude towards the investigators. So in the beginning, the investigators were high up, very good, great at their job, doing a great job. That was the feeling. Then it changed to mocking them, laughing at them for questioning a $400 cheese purchase, as if that's somehow normal in any way. But I had pulled that clip I'd played before where Alora's complaining that JF is feeding her too much cheese. You guys remember that one? So I think cheese is a big thing for JF. It's an interesting thing about sociopaths. They talk about food. There's some study done that they talk about food more than any other thing. And no, JF, that's not using that as evidence. I'm just remarking as an interesting factoid that $400 in cheese seems a little obsessive. I hope it's good cheese. You would think it would have to be, right?
He went from being really nervous to...
So we're going over John Carter's 911 call. And this is statement analysis. This will not make a lot of sense, the whole concept of it, if you didn't watch last JF stream, the stream before this about JF. But I think you might get the hang of it just if you open your ears and listen.
Now, like really freaking out, okay? And he feels the need to explain why this emotion is there. There's no necessity to explain why someone would be nervous at this point. This is becoming very sensitive. What this is indicating to me is what we call artificial emotion and artificial placement of emotion. I believe that he's really nervous and I believe he's freaking out, but I believe what he's telling me, and he's talking about himself. This call so far has been about him, who he is, his name, and his emotions. All I know about the victim is that her relationship to him is fiance, but that's all I know. I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what she's going through. I don't hear any concern for her. I don't even know her name at this point.
Right. And JF's put out no public appeals for Alora. He refuses to show her picture and he refuses to use her real name.
So the 911 operator then has to ask, what's her name? He had to be asked to give her name. I cannot imagine getting through this far in information without saying who it was that's missing. But he was able to do that. So he says, Caitlin Helene Markham. That's all he said. He gave the full and proper name. So the 911 operator is thinking about his commitment that he can't find her anywhere, but he's going to stop by her house. So she said, have you called the hospitals or jails or anything? Because he can't find her anywhere. So now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It's a pretty, someone that says, I can't find her anywhere. That's a very firm and strong statement. So specifically, have you called the hospitals, jails, and the operator gives herself away. She says, or anything, because she doesn't believe him. Because it certainly doesn't sound like someone is giving me a flow of information to identify and find Caitlin. Anything? And so we have another question that he doesn't answer. He says, and that's it, nothing else. So the 911 operator, and this is, I tip my hat to her. She knows that he did not give the location where he last saw her. He gave the time, but not the location. So the 911 dispatch says, where was she at midnight last night when you last?
And JF didn't give the location either. It's some gas station near the bridge, but it's all on electronic video, right? From the gas station. And we shouldn't be worried because the investigators know he's not a suspect. And by that, I mean they've already videoed his interview and are giving him a lie detector test.
Last saw her? This was a great question. It was unnecessary, and it should not have been asked. And this is where you see the 911 operator. She's listening. She is listening to this man's words, and she recognized he ducked the question. He ducked the question about anything, jails, hospitals, anything. His non-committal words, his casual expressions of going by her house. So she adds, have you done anything? So where was she at midnight last night using his time period when you last saw her? So at this point, she is his fiance. She has no name until he finally gave the full name. And the expectation is that he's going to say, we were at her house. And the word we is something we look at as intuitive and something very important in analysis. It's a very powerful pronoun. In fact, I can prove to you how powerful this pronoun is. If I were to ask you or anyone in the audience, I want you to think of a true story. And I want it to be many years ago, 20 years ago. And it has to be true. And I want you to picture in your mind what your story is going to be, and then tell me your story. It is very likely that you're going to answer me knowing whether you should use the word we or the word I, whether you were alone or whether you were with someone else. Without even stopping to think, say, should I use we because I was with someone else, or should I use I because I was alone? It is intuitive. Pronouns actually predate speech. The international symbol of possession from a little toddler for mine is this with the hand. My dada, my baba, even before they can speak my. We are possessive creatures by nature. This is my pen. This is my fiance. Okay?
That's why all this arguments about pronouns and proper pronouns are so disturbing to so many of us, because we're being asked to change the whole language and what's intuitive to us and what is reality. We're asked to go against our nature, what we know, what we see, what we feel, what we know to be true, i.e. that men are men and women are women, right? And you really can't change your sex, but that is the same idea, that we instinctively use these pronouns. And it'll be interesting to see what will happen with our culture should this take hold, and how significantly it will change it.
The word we shows unity and cooperation. It shows plural. First of all, we were together, but it shows unity and cooperation. In fact, we use it in sexual assault cases. So if someone says, we drove to the woods and he raped me, and then we drove home. If the word we is used after the sexual assault, it wasn't a sexual assault, because the rape victim will never use the word we in correlation with her and the rapist after the rape has taken place. It's a signal that it's a deceptive statement. It's that powerful. I was asked to join into a organization that was trying to free Dennis DeShane of Maine, who had been convicted of killing 13-year-old Sarah.
This is a massive innocence fraud case, and it is gaining popularity.
Many years ago. And I was given the information about the case, and I had the transcripts of the trial where he took the stand in his own defense. He said he was on drugs and he was in the woods. He had gone fishing. He was by himself. He got lost, but he had never met the little girl that was found murdered. And he was alone the whole time. So I said I would look it over, and a private investigator had given me just an abundance of reasons why he was innocent. And I said, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Within the first few minutes of the transcript, when he took the stand, it's right where I went to, when he took the stand, tell us what happened. At one point he said, I was admiring the deciduous trees and we were losing daylight. So I got up. And when he said we were losing daylight, the prosecutor said, Mr. DeShane, who is we? And the defense called for a recess, and they huddled overnight, and the next morning they came back and said, we, meaning all of us, we were all losing daylight, even though he was alone in the woods in Maine, and the jury didn't buy it. I gave back the information to the private investigator and said, you're looking at a guilty man. Pronouns do not lie. He was not alone. That's how powerful they are. So where were you when you last saw her? I expect him to say, we were at her home. Because that's what he led me to believe if I interpret his words. I don't interpret, I listen. Where were you? The question is, where were you, John Carter, the caller? I'm sorry, where was she at midnight when you, John Carter, the caller, last saw her? So I expect to hear, we were at her house. He said, she was at her house. She was going to bed. She wasn't going out to do anything, so she wouldn't have been in her bed. I mean, I've been with her 6 years. She's not deceiving, you know, she doesn't. So the first thing I notice is that he doesn't use her name. It's a psychological distancing from her. He doesn't use the pronoun we to connect himself and Caitlin. He tells us where she was, but nothing about him. He tells us what she was intending to do, not what she did. She was going to bed. Then he says she wasn't going out to do anything.
And there's so little detail to that final. I dropped her off. I said goodbye, good luck. What happened? What was the plan for your relationship when she decided to leave? Did she say, I'm never coming back? And did she make plans for the kids to be taken care of? Odd. It's just an odd thing, the way he's like, well, the main point that you get from that story about JF dropping Laura off at the gas station is that he was in front of the cameras and that it's an alibi for him. Not that it was, wow, I watched her go and I thought, wow, that's the end of that relationship. Now I'm a single dad. I don't know what you would think, but something, right? Some kind of detail. The main detail is it's an alibi for him. They know because I dropped her off because there were cameras there at a gas station, nameless gas station near Confederation Bridge. Okay.
Anything. So he introduced to us in the negative. What we look for people to do is tell us what happened. When someone tells us what didn't happen, what wasn't thought, what wasn't said, instead of what did happen, what was thought, what was said, it's called a negative. What someone tells us in the negative is more important than what someone tells us in the positive. So he's telling us what she didn't do, which you have to ask, how would he know that? And he doesn't say we were at her.
Right. She wasn't deceptive. So there were problems between the two. She was a real go-getter type, Caitlin Markham. John Carter was kind of I got the impression that he was a pot-smoking slouch from the documentary, which was really excellent. Gone Too Soon on Caitlin Markham. I wish they would just release that on YouTube. But it's all her friends describing her, talking about her. It's really centered around her and her story. And immediately after she was gone, just like JF, John Carter was hitting on other women. And JF is taking applications for a new girlfriend to inseminate, or a new woman to inseminate. So romantic, isn't it?
Her house. Then he said, and I mean, I've been with her for 6 years. Not I've been with Caitlin. Not Caitlin and I have been together for 6 years. Not even we have been together. I have been with her for 6 years. The word with, when it is between people, indicates distance. I could say, Heather and I went Christmas shopping. Or I could say, I went Christmas shopping with Heather, putting Heather and I at opposite ends between the word with, meaning distance. The distance could be anything. It doesn't have to be nefarious. It can be psychological distancing where I didn't want to go shopping, something that simple. But it is distancing language. The fact that thus far he hasn't uttered the word Caitlin other than the formal stating of her name is not expected from a fiance. So I'm kind of on alert for this now. And now we have the distancing language. And then he says something else. He tells us what she wasn't going to do, as if he knew her intention. He said, she's not deceiving, you know. He introduced deception into this 911 call. That's not expected.
Right. And it makes me think of when JF said about Alora to the investigators, she's committed no crime. She's a 007. She's a fugitive who's committed no crime. Kind of interesting to throw crime in there. Just an interesting factoid.
And he stopped himself. It's called self-censoring. He stopped there. He didn't want to go any further. But in introducing something in the negative, he's calling our attention to a topic. And the topic he's associating is with Caitlin, and the topic is deception. So he's now made us think of Caitlin and deception together. That's a negative. So he did not use her name. He did not use the pronoun we. This is affirming to me the distance in the lack of introduction, the social introduction that began with. So we have to consider he's engaged to the person who's missing. That means he should be on high alert, well familiar with the last moments together. We were together. Over and over in his mind, he'd be thinking about those last moments together when he last saw her. You wouldn't sleep at night thinking about these last precious moments. He avoids it. He avoids it.
Right, because it's been 4 months of happiness for JF. Craig RS, made an interesting comment. He says he made that sighting with a call to the police. The sighting just so happened to be the same day he last got a text from her. He was the only person who knew that date was important. He's talking about the 19th with that sighting. And we don't know the details of that sighting, but that sighting is the sighting that jogged his memory to remember what she was wearing. And you would think that that would already be burned in his brain. The last time I saw her, mother of my children, saying goodbye to a many, many year relationship.
In fact, I call this extreme distancing due to the context. The avoidance of her name, other than when he was forced to by the operator, given the fact that A, she's missing, and B, she's his fiance, he's telling us this is a problem relationship. He can't even use her name. It's a psychological distancing that's become extreme now. So
psychological distancing. But you say I've had 4 months of happiness, and talk about how destructive women are to the house and how you finally have it the way you like it, and how it's like surgically clean your house. Talk about extreme distancing. It's just the message I get is I want everyone to know I hated Alora, and things are so much better now that she's gone.
She wasn't going out to do anything. You might want to consider what was anything that he wanted to do to go out. Did she refuse to go out? I mean, police need to know what this sounds like an argument to me. The operator senses argument as well. And the operator says, okay, and this is not a way to word a question, but she said, and you guys didn't have an argument or anything? And he said, not at all. Instead of no, not at all, which gives, in the negative, a greater emphasis. He gives an emphasis, but then he says nothing else. At this point, I think it's fair to say this is not a call of someone really helping to facilitate information. He said he couldn't find her anywhere, but then he couldn't identify a single place that he looked. He avoided saying where he last saw her. He had to be asked again. And then he went to her house and immediately off into things that she wouldn't do. And then he introduced the topic of deception. When someone goes missing, and you picture this for your own loved ones, when someone goes missing, the only thing we can concentrate is on the wonderful things about them. We miss them terribly. We're scared out of our minds for them. We don't need to persuade anyone that I'm afraid. I'm afraid. No need to persuade the police, unless, of course, there's a need to persuade. Okay, is she on any medications or anything? And that would be a simple no, yes or no answer. But again, the emphasis, not at all. And so I would, at that point, consider I need to explore for not only psychotropic medications, but marijuana or any possible substance abuse in this relationship, in the dynamics of him calling and mentioning what he's mentioned thus far. Because it's a simple yes or no question. He went to not at all, which is emphatic. Has she had thoughts of suicide or anything like that? He said no, then, which should end it there. Then he went to never. Then he went to the word I, the pronoun I, and then he went back to never. This is a self-censoring, and he's literally tripping over his own pronoun there. No, never, I, never. And whatever he was going to say, he broke off the sentence, which tells us his missing information. He could have stopped at no, but he continued to go. So I think we're now having some form of distancing language where he is psychologically depersonalizing the victim. He's not using her name. The 911 operator is in the place of having to go fishing for information. Okay?
And in typical JF fashion, right? She's just like a junior him, right? She's just like the other half of him. She's just the mama JF. She doesn't get her own name. And he doesn't want to give her image without consent, because consent has been such a important word in JF's life. He has been accused so many times of not respecting consent, and he does not respect consent. He doesn't understand that someone with an IQ of a 10 to 11-year-old can't consent. And to support Bill Cosby would also signal someone with some real issues around the issues of consent.
He already identified that he couldn't find her anywhere, but upon further questioning, we got no indication that he did check the hospitals or any place else. So then she asked, because you have to put yourself in her shoes as well. Here's a guy that said, I can't find her anywhere, but she can't identify a single place he's even looked. And he's casually stopping by her house. He said, all right, have you talked to her mom or anybody like that to see maybe she's out shopping or something? I mean, that's like simple stuff. He said, I called her father. The only thing that's not there.
See, all these details we don't know. I would assume that if JF called the parents, the whole relationship with the parents is the thing that's so interesting to me. How did they get the kids if they have the kids? What was he telling them during those 4 months she was gone? Did they know she was gone? Because it seems like they were just alerted when this medical professional alerted the police. But if they were estranged, they wouldn't know till 4 months later. And what are they? What's their relationship with the police? Also, JF was saying that people were writing the police, writing the investigators and PEI. I don't know what they think they're going to achieve with that, unless they knew her, unless they have some kind of information. But that's something I would really discourage people from doing, inserting themselves in an investigation.
There is her cell phone, which is positive, but she's not answering it. So, and the Sacred Heart Festival is going on right up the street, and there's a lot of questionable people there, and it just kind of, I'm sorry. So this answer is what we call pregnant, with a lot of new information for us.
So JF did the same kind of thing, right? Where he threw out the idea that she might be at truck stops, that she flirted with a lot of danger, that she had made the decision herself to get rid of her cell phone, that she wanted to fully be off grid with no money, no cell phone, doing the most dangerous thing possible. And because of his own belief in liberté, he's not going to argue with her. He's not going to hold her. He's going to let her go. He's going to do the most magnanimous thing you can do. Let her go. But fine if you're going to let someone go, but with no idea and no concern for their safety and no concern for your children. Because if a health professional called this in, that means that they were missing appointments. And if they were her appointments, fine. But if they were the children's appointments, that's something else. There's all this gray matter in this story that we just don't know.
Us. You've noticed that I mentioned before we began that statements, 911 calls in domestic homicides that begin with a greeting are often end up being guilty caller status. I also then mentioned that 911 calls in domestic homicides that use the word I'm sorry, the words I'm sorry, also fall into that same category. This is where he's thinking for whatever reason, he needs to be sorry. Now he could be sorry that she's missing, or sorry that he interrupted the operator, or sorry that he's in this situation himself. But thus far, I've not heard anything about Caitlin. She's missing from this call. There's no description of her clothing, her attributes, anything.
And that's something other people have mentioned, which is that he seems annoyed to be having to talk about this. And he seems to be annoyed that people are interested in Alora and not his amazing ideas about politics and race relations and all the other creepy things he believes. And yes, we have talked, someone's asking about terrorism. Yes, he did accuse her of terrorism, very much like the same thing. She's destructive, she's terroristic, right before the last stream before she disappeared. But I've watched streams with them together. And it's interesting because oftentimes there seems to be, I don't know how to put it. There's some moments in it, maybe we can go through them sometime, but where she looks defeated. But that could, you just don't know. It's so hard to know what's going on behind the scenes. When someone's putting on their best face. But yeah, I was thinking back to that Christmas tree, and he's complimenting her food, and she just kind of looks like, I don't know what that is. It's kind of, I don't know. It's just like not really believing, not really taking in the compliment. I don't know. There's just some kind of like interesting little moment between those two. So I don't know what the state of the relationship was, but he seems to always want more and more women to inseminate and make as many JFs as he can. And how disappointed will he be when these children grow up to be nothing like him. That's going to be a rude awakening.
He then introduces a red herring. He now has given them some suspects, which don't include him. Because he's a good guy. He keeps the rules. He's very polite to police. He wouldn't even call it, but except he's such a good guy that, I know you're supposed to wait the 24 hours, but I'm doing it anyway. And he's also sorry. And I'm listening to him. He says there's a lot of questionable people there at the Sacred Heart Festival. So he's now giving them to think about that. But he was asked, have you talked to her mom or anyone like that? And he said, I called her father. The next thing I expect to hear is, well, what did dad say? What did mom say? What did other people say? Instead, he went to something that he needed to tell them. He needed them to know the only thing that's not there is her cell phone. Now, what does that mean? The only thing that's not there is a cell phone. Has he inventoried everything in the house already? Has he gone through the house and knows the only thing that is missing? Cell phone? So he's introduced cell phone statistically. When someone brings in the free editing process, cell phone or phone, there's a statistic correlation between that and placing the person at the crime scene. So now you should be on the alert because he wasn't asked what was still at her apartment, what did she have on her, what was she dressed like, anything. He hasn't asked those questions and he hasn't offered them either.
Kind of interesting, right? I don't know what the science is behind that or the statistics, but we can go back. If you go back to the other stream where he's telling his audience about Alora's disappearance, what Peter Hyatt would call the free editing process, his alibi is of premier importance. Premier importance. And Alora's well-being is not considered at all. He's certain she's fine, with no evidence of her being fine, and with no evidence of her doing this ever before. And I don't mean taking a trip. I mean taking a trip without a cell phone, not using your credit cards, no money, no supplies, a tiny book bag, and maybe a backpack, he said in different interviews. And that story changed because originally she was buying tons of camping gear, and then it changed to just a few things.
But he has offered a cell phone. So you must be on alert. We must be on alert for something about the cell phone that will be part of a script. So we're listening. Is something he's going to do with this cell phone because it's important enough for him to mention in a 911 call. It's important enough for us to listen. So he concluded with the words, I'm sorry. Okay. And then she said, okay, well, we'll go ahead and have someone meet you there. What kind of vehicle are you going to be in? And this is kind of, to me, almost a little bit comical. He said, a 2008 Ford Focus. It's red. I know more about his car than I know about Caitlin. I know about his vehicle's color. I don't know anything about Caitlin because he made it through this call without using her name once, except when he had to. That's psychological distancing language. He's given me.
And I would say we would know more about the state of how JF cleaned his apartment than how or why Alora is missing or disappeared.
Indications that he's lying about searching. And she caught him in that lie. He hasn't searched. And he refused initially to give the location of where he last saw her. And then when he finally did say she was at her house, he didn't say that's where I saw her or that's where we were. She was there. I believe that's true. But he didn't say that that was the last place he saw her. He didn't use those words. The operator did. He is giving short answers and limiting his answers. He's not working to facilitate information. So this is his 911 call. He ends with, okay, bye-bye. He's very polite. And my conclusion is that he is deceptively withholding information about what happened to Caitlin when he made this call. He has a need not only to withhold information, but he has a need to portray himself as a good guy. We call this ingratiating, where someone has a need to ingratiate themselves to police. When a child goes missing, for example, people are urgent. And if the police don't find my child or my fiance or anyone, they failed. I'm not going to praise them for not finding her, unless I want to praise them for not finding her, because I didn't want her found. He is, in measuring the number of words focused upon Caitlin and the number of words focused on himself, it is off the charts. This call's priority is about himself, his feelings, what he knows, what he's done, and in the sense what he hasn't done, and not about Caitlin. I have very little information about Caitlin. The only thing I know about her is that she's missing and her relationship to him,
And I think that's what fascinates us about this story, is that this is such an extreme, obvious case of egoism gone mad, right? So we've just heard that this investigation is a nuisance to him. They're knocking on his door, not letting him sleep late. They're asking him stupid questions about buying cheese. They're going through his financial records. It's a nuisance. That's the headache. Not that Alora's missing. That's bliss. 4 months of happiness. Terroristic threat out of the house. Bring on the new women. It's so extreme. Most people try at some basic level to imitate human behavior. But for JF, he is just such a special guy. He's not a normie. He delights in this. And there's a really funny part where he's complaining about the cheese charge and asking about this charge for supposed cheese in Quebec. Fine. And he says, it's a real high-level guy investigating my case, because they wouldn't put a low-level guy on something important, because I'm an important guy. That's what I got from it. Just everything connected to me is the best of the best.
Fiance. And then he mentioned the phone, which is going to become important. So when we get to the point of text messages or calls, we need to be on the alert that he already telegraphed something so important about that cell phone before we get to the second interview, which is the radio interview. He is deceptive about the last time he saw her alive. He expresses no concern for Caitlin while he highlights his own emotions. He is deceptive about saying that he searched everywhere for her. And he is also very concerned about how he is perceived by police rather than show actual concern for Caitlin. So my conclusion...
I mean, you would have thought that he was talking about JF there in some ways. If you just substitute Alora for Caitlin and JF for John. Many mentions his cell phone. This does not make him guilty. It's just interesting. We're just looking at interesting stuff. The totality of the story. The totality of what's the evidence that's being built. Because obviously the investigators find this very weird too. Because if they thought this was a missing person case, I don't think it would progress in the way that it's progressed. It's progressing into a criminal investigation. That's where we're at now.
Of the 911 call is that he has what we call the status of a guilty caller. It doesn't mean he killed her. He is deliberately withholding information because he knows what's happened to her. He knows what happened to her, and he's suppressing that information. 6 days later, he gave an interview on radio, and what we look for now is...
All right, they're going into the radio interview. I think that is where I'm going to end it for today. If you liked this episode, please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe, support the show on Patreon, or with a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Thanks so much for all your great comments. I do read them all. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, hit the thumbs up to keep me in your threads. Have a great night, everybody.